What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazique, aka Unique Mazique, the hardest working man in sports and gaming. And I am a fight guy, a Forbes contributor, and I also write for Heavy.com. And I'm here with my fellow fight guy, also fellow Forbes contributor and Boxing Manager of the Year candidate for 2019, Peter Kahn. What's going on today, Pete?
Hey, Brian. Listen, I'm just happy that we're healthy. We're still in quarantine, but you know what? Every day that we get to do this show, every day that we're healthy, is a great day. I hope everyone else out there is healthy as well. And I'm just happy to be looking at you right now.
All right. I appreciate that. And the feeling is mutual. We are powered by Fight TV and presented by Bet Online. If you're watching this video on Fight TV, make sure that you go over to YouTube, search The Fight Guy, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have additional content there, stuff you don't want to miss if you love combat sports, and vice versa. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you head over to Fight TV, where they have even more additional content for combat sports, and subscribe to the app. But let's go ahead and jump into round one.
Go for it.
All right, so the zone has a heavyweight tournament of sorts that they're running, and they appear to be down to a final four of sorts, of pretty much like a who's who when you talk about you know, major heavyweight names. And their bracket right now, here in this particular section of their bracket, they have Muhammad Ali is the #1 seed against George Foreman, which is kind of a strange kind of a thing because obviously we know we already saw that fight. Right. And then we got Joe Louis against Mike Tyson, and they're kind of asking their viewers who wins this fight. So I thought it'd be interesting for us. I love the fantasy conversations. I love the what ifs. Obviously, you can't ever really get a definitive answer, of course, unless maybe Floyd Mayweather's likeness whole deal comes into play and we can get some sort of cyber fight. But you really can't get an answer. I guess that's kind of the coolness of it because it's about the discussion. But Ali Foreman, obviously, I mean, haven't already seen that fight. Would you say something different would happen if some sort of way? I mean, you got to say Ali goes ahead in that particular bracket, right?
Yes and no. Oh. I think yes, because we already know that it happened. But I also think that the circumstances surrounding that fight were so unique that it was a perfect storm, right? Yes. It was a perfect storm. Ali Boumbaye, what was it? Yeah. It was Boumbaye. It was just a perfect storm with who got cut in training. Who got cut in training? Was it Foreman?
Foreman got cut in training.
Right, which then postponed the fight. Then there were some other issues. It just dragged on. And I just think that at the time, it was just, like I said, just a perfect recipe. And come on, I mean, that's where the rope-a-dope was born. So, you know, look, I think we know that everyone's going to say, yeah, we've already seen this fight. So Ali has to win because it would be kind of weird. We'd have to be like in some other universe or other dimension, I should say, in order for us to say, because we've seen the fight. They fought once. We saw what happened. Ali stopped them. That's it. So, but I am saying that maybe if they fought 10 times under different circumstances, you know, maybe they split. Maybe Foreman's punching power, you know, would prevail. I don't know. I think that's interesting. I think that's interesting. And I think there's some validity there because beyond the, you know, the delays and all that sort of thing, fighting in Kinshasa was, even though it wasn't technically a home field advantage for Ali, it felt like it by the time the fight happened. I mean, George Foreman says, if anybody's ever seen the, you know, the We Were Kings documentary, he said, by the great documentary.
It's fantastic.
Won a Oscar.
Yeah, it did. He said by the time that fight came around, he said, I was questioning if I was actually black or not, because the way he was being treated was like he wasn't. And this was at a really super, you know, political time. And Ali had really controlled the narrative of the fight. And he had won the mind game completely leading up to the fight. And then the rope-a-dope only furthered the mind trick that he had been playing on Foreman for the whole fight. So it's a fascinating fight. It's a fascinating build, a fascinating overall story. But yeah, I would have to say Ali goes ahead for the same reasons that you pointed out. Now, the really interesting one though is the Mike Tyson Joe Louis one, right?
Right.
For me personally, and I get a lot of flack from especially from major historians, but I just don't consider Joe Louis to be someone who could compete against larger heavyweights. And obviously, Mike's not a large heavyweight, but we're talking about, if you look at the weights that Joe Louis was fighting at heavyweight, if he fought more from, I would say, from the 90s up, he would probably have been advised to fight light heavyweight or cruiserweight.
Right.
So because of that, it makes me feel like I just can't imagine. I can't imagine Joe Louis beating an elite heavyweight from another era. And I don't mean that as a disrespect to Joe Louis. I think it's just a time thing.
I mean, look, there's a romanticism about Joe Louis. Absolutely. You know, I mean, he was an American hero. Mm-hmm. And at the time, he was the top heavyweight in the world. And he really represented the nation, you know, more so than just heavyweight boxing, you know, domestically here. I mean, he represented the United States, and he was just he was an excellent role model.
Yeah,
I think Mike Tyson absolutely crushes him in a fight. Like, I wouldn't even see it being competitive. I think he would stop Joe Louis every single time they fought. Faster, quicker, stronger, bigger. I don't think there would have been a way in which Joe Louis would have been able to handle a Mike Tyson.
I cannot agree more. I mean, that's just, I don't really think there's much.
And you know, and I want to see what other people think. I mean, guys, you got to comment here.
Absolutely.
You got to get in on this dialogue and on the conversation. If you're watching on Fight TV right now, live, go into the chat. If you're in YouTube watching live, go into the chat. Let us know, because, you know, we value your opinion. These are just our opinions. You know, although we have a lot of time that we spend here in the sport, I mean, by all means, you know, we want to know what you think.
Absolutely. For sure that it's going to be powered by your guys' dialogue and comments. So I really want to see if other people are in agreement with us. Let's go to between the rounds. So I got something to say, and this is in relation to the Canelo Triple G fight that we pretty much everyone suspects is going to be both of those guys' first fight after, you know, the coronavirus situation is lifted.
Right, probably in September.
Probably in September, hopefully in September, right? So both sides, or
what you got?
I shouldn't even say both sides. I should say Canelo's side is already beginning the war of words. Mm-hmm. So Canelo's trainer Eddie Reynoso said yesterday that trainer of the year mm-hmm. says that he doesn't see in any way, shape, or form how this fight is going to go the distance. The third fight, says that, you know, that Canelo's going to finish him this time. That's the talk that's coming everywhere. Now, I do not doubt that Canelo is going to win the third fight. Usually, if you look through history and you look at all of the great rivalries and trilogies between two fighters, especially when there's a fairly significant gap in age, the deeper into the trilogy, mm-hmm. the bigger the advantage the younger man has. And it only makes sense, right? So I do believe that Canelo wins this walking away, but I don't believe he's going to stop Golovkin. Golovkin's chin has just proven to be just granite against some people who we know can crack, including Canelo. So that's my take. I am interested in hearing what your rebuttal is during the championship rounds. I don't know if you agree with me or not. I can't wait to find out. But let's jump into round two. All right, now in round two, we're talking about Mikey Garcia, mm-hmm. and we're throwing some major names. I mean, we already talked about Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman. We're talking about some big time people at this point, but Mikey Garcia is implying that a fight with Manny Pacquiao, which seems to be what he's after once the coronavirus situation is lifted for him.
Right.
He's implying that this is going to be an easier fight for him at welterweight, because he's very insistent upon staying at 147 because Pacquiao's a smaller guy. I want to know, what do you think about that?
I think everybody makes the same mistake. And I love the Garcias, and I see Robert all the time, and we talk about different things. And first of all, I don't think they're going to fight. So, and I kind of have that on good authority. Unless something dramatically changes, unless this pandemic has inspired things to change, they're not fighting. And that's something I got directly from Pacquiao's camp, not Mikey Garcia.
Right.
So that's number one. Number two, everybody keeps saying this about Manny Pacquiao, and I don't know if they've all been living under a rock or they forget that he is Superman.
Roy Jones Jr. Y'all must have forgot.
Hey, listen. Well, Adrian Broner must have forgot. Keith Thurman
must have forgot.
You know, a guy like Matisse who wasn't, you know, wasn't trash talking, but, you know, figured he was going to stop Pacquiao. Well, he got stopped. He must have forgot. Okay. So I just don't know, because I don't know. Look, Mikey Garcia is not a welterweight. He must have forgot.
He must have forgot that he's not a welterweight.
And listen, Mikey's a phenomenal fighter, no doubt about it. He fought. He put up a valiant effort against a bigger, stronger, really immovable, you know, Errol Spence Jr. But I think Mikey fought too cautious. I think if Mikey would have been a little bit more willing to risk it all, he would have had more success in that fight. He basically allowed Spence to win that fight from distance behind the jab. Underestimate Manny Pacquiao, and that little guy will find ways to carve you up. Before you know it, you're on your butt. And you know, he's just who he is. I mean, he is an anomaly of the sport. You know, multiple titles in 8 different weight classes. The only fighter that will ever do that in the history of boxing. So for Mikey Garcia to say it's an easier fight than Spence, it's a completely different fight. I think he actually runs the risk of getting hit more because Pacquiao, you know, throws those combinations and the punches and bunches, and he's a lot faster and quicker, completely different style. He's a southpaw. He's not going to stand in front of him. He punches while coming forward. You know, the Spence fight was a very measured, slow, methodical fight. So I understand Mikey Garcia sees it as a big payday. Pacquiao is heading toward the sunset of his career. But like I said, A, I don't see it happening. B, I would still pick Pacquiao in that fight.
Yeah, I would say so as well. Well, put it like this. I wouldn't say, or I wouldn't be shocked, right, if Mikey Garcia beat Manny Pacquiao. I wouldn't be shocked. He's a younger guy. You know, it makes sense. There's a thought process that will back that up. But I do think, and he wasn't like disrespecting Manny, because if anybody knows or has ever spoken to Mikey, they know that's not his style. He doesn't like disrespect people, doesn't call people out.
He was just giving his opinion on the matchup. Compared to Spence. And
he was actually talking far more candidly than you will hear most fighters talk, which is a refreshing thing. But I do think that I do agree with you. There may be a little bit of underestimation there, thinking that because he's smaller, that will be, you know, the size thing is going to be the only deal. But he did talk about that he remembered sparring with him, and it was years ago. But I think everybody knows that sparring with somebody is completely different than
I'm going to be real right now for 30 seconds. I managed George Kambosos Jr., who's top-rated lightweight. Okay, he was Manny's chief sparring partner for 3 camps in a row.
Right,
over 300 sparring rounds with Manny. When Manny would decide to put the foot on the pedal and go at 100%, just to remind George who he was, you can see the difference in work rate. You can see Manny come out and it's, you know, and listen, George is phenomenal. I mean, I think George is going to be a world champion. Probably
going to be a world champion, but puts it into perspective.
But it's just perspective. I mean, Manny's very special. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, maybe one of the top 3 fighters of all time.
Absolutely. It's interesting, and I would love to get an opportunity to see if what Mikey says turns out, or if maybe we finally have seen something with Manny where there is a fall off. But I do hear what you're saying, that it's probably not going to happen unless something has changed. So let's jump to between the rounds. Peter, I know you had something to say, and this is about Dominic Brazil and Andy Ruiz, which I think is just interesting anyway. What did you have?
I mean, look, I was reading something yesterday that Dominic Brazil said that he would like to fight Andy Ruiz Jr. and that he wants to be, or that he thinks he'll be the first guy to stop him. My whole point is, who cares? No, I'll tell you why. You're talking about two guys that just had opportunities to be great.
Right.
Andy Ruiz shit the bed in the rematch against Anthony Joshua.
Yeah.
He could have come and beaten him in the rematch, but he did not come prepared.
Right.
And he even had some moments, and he did not come prepared. Dominic Brazil, I mean, he was a highlight reel knockout loss to Deontay Wilder in his last fight. So, you know, I understand PBC keep recycling their own guys, fighting against each other. There has to be more meaningful matchups for guys like Brazil than now getting recycled into the losers bracket with Andy Ruiz, because honestly, it's going to remind me of the Charles Martin, Gerald Washington eliminator, which honestly, you know, I'm happy for my friends that represent these guys, and I'm happy Charles Martin's now the manager. But did you hear that? Because I have to keep it real. I'm going to be real because people are real about my guys, so I'm going to be real. I mean, does anybody want to see that? Did anybody honestly want to see Charles Martin and Gerald Washington in the co-feature of Wilder Fury 2? Did you want to see that? Did you care? And I'm just asking, do you really want to see Brazil and Andy Ruiz Jr., especially after the last two performances?
Well, I am going to answer that in the championship rounds. Yeah, I think
I know I just got some people that think I'm hating, but I'm not hating. It's just, it is what it is.
It is what it is. And I can absolutely respect that for sure. So let's jump into round 3. My favorite. I'm going to tell you. So full disclosure.
Yes.
Full disclosure. Roy Jones Jr. is my personal GOAT. He is the greatest talent that I have ever seen in the sport. Just my personal opinion, right? Greatest talent I've ever seen.
Yeah.
There are some, he is one of my favorites. I tell people know me. I'm a Chicago native, live and die with Chicago sports. Derrick Rose is my favorite basketball player ever. He's not the best, but he's my favorite. So Derrick Rose Mike Tyson is
more than MJ.
Derrick Rose is my favorite.
Okay.
So
I heard you said not the best, but he's your favorite.
Not the best, but he's my favorite.
Okay,
Mike Tyson is to boxing for me what Derrick Rose is to basketball. Mike Tyson's maybe my favorite fighter, but I do realize he's not the best. He's not even the best heavyweight. It's not the top 5 best heavyweight in my personal opinion.
Okay.
But Roy is to boxing what Michael Jordan is to basketball for me, which makes sense that he, was with Jordan Brand. Right. So I try to communicate on Twitter. So if anybody wants to talk to me on Twitter, make sure you look here at Unique Mazique. Talk about combat sports, video games. I'm always there for it. I'm there for the Chicago sports conversations too. But someone was talking to me and they were trying to really discredit Roy Jones's career. Basically told me.
And you gave it time?
I gave it time to a point.
Okay.
I gave it time to a point. I don't get this. I really don't get this argument, man. We're talking about he beat a young Bernard Hopkins. He beat him, but that's how he won the world title. James Toney's gonna be a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Masterfully beat James Toney. Whether people realize it or not, Virgil Hill's a Hall of Famer. Y'all must have forgot. Knocked Virgil Hill out with a body shot. Yeah, that happened. Mike McCallum's a Hall of Famer.
Body snatcher. Yep.
When he fought Montiel.
Technical loss.
Yes. No, the second fight. When he fought Montiel.
Had him shaking and twitching.
Montiel was 26-0 and a world champion when he beat him.
Yeah. First round. Vengeance.
A lot of people don't realize how good Reggie Johnson was.
Right.
Reggie Johnson was a good fighter. He was a unified champion.
Man, this guy had you in your feelings over here. I mean,
You
like you're defending Roy like it's your girlfriend.
You mess with Roy, you're gonna get these hands.
Yeah, I see that.
So I mean, I know you probably have had like some ringside experiences watching Roy. I would love to hear you tell me about, like, I love hearing people's like favorite watching Roy in person stories.
Right. I mean, Roy, first of all, let's just take it a step back.
Mm-hmm.
Roy was the victim of flat out robbery and corruption.
The Olympics, yeah.
In the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
Should have been a gold medal winner.
Yeah, it was 88, right?
Yeah, in Seoul. He was the gold medal winner. And even his opponent admitted that it was just, he doesn't know how that happened. But then it came out years later that it was corruption and it was robbery.
Yes.
So let's just say won the gold medal.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, going in the pros, middleweight, super middleweight. Okay, light heavy. Hey, let's not forget, he's the first fighter to go from middleweight to heavyweight, beating John Ruiz.
Yeah. And
along the way, he was the most naturally, athletically gifted fighter that I've ever seen in person.
Yes.
And I love Pacquiao, but you know, and I feel that Floyd is such a special, skilled, talented fighter, right? But what I'm telling you is that Roy Jones Jr. athletically was better than anyone that I've ever seen. The speed, the quickness, the ability for you to know the punch was coming and still couldn't do a damn thing about it. Okay? Just couldn't do a damn thing about it. And when he wanted to put his foot on that gas pedal and get rid of you, you were gone. And the competitiveness, the mindset, the dog in him. And that's what I loved about Roy.
Yeah.
The dog in him, his alter ego, right? How he would refer to himself as RJ. Okay. And that was the guy in the ring. I got to see him train. I was able to see him train during his prime. The work ethic, the relentless, mean spirit inside that ring, the showman. I don't even believe Roy Jones Jr. lost many rounds. I'd be interested to see how many rounds he actually lost. Now, yes, later in the career, you know, he got caught by Tarver. Okay, I mean, Glenn Johnson knocked him out with a jab. I mean, clearly the decline had happened.
Yeah,
okay?
Anything after 2003 doesn't even matter.
Remember, boxing is the only sport where we use the term a fighter gets old overnight.
Yes.
And literally from one fight to the next. And we've seen it happen with so many fighters, right? And so in this case, I just, you know, I think you gave way too much credence in wanting to even defend Roy's record. I mean, Roy fought everyone there was to fight during his prime. I guess maybe we would have wanted to see Joe Calzaghe during his prime. Right. I mean, I'm just trying to think like
Darius Michalczewski was one fight that he kept getting called out for.
Right.
Darius would only fight him if he came over there to fight him. Right. And Roy was like, why would I?
Right.
I'm Roy.
Right.
I mean, I'm the pound for pound champ. I'm the pound for pound champion. Everybody, so you gonna tell me you haven't fought anybody?
You tell me who's gonna run the table from middleweight to heavyweight ever again?
I can't imagine the person.
Xander Zayas?
Well, you know what? It'd have to be somebody like Xander, who is already so tall and is clearly not as big as they're going to get.
Right. But remember what Roy made up for. See, Roy wasn't, you know, Roy was tall, but not heavyweight tall.
Right.
He fought the right heavyweight.
The right heavyweight.
Yeah. Okay. But his speed, I mean, speed kills, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the only other heavyweight that would have been an interesting fight and I wouldn't have really wanted to see this for Roy's sake, just because of the size, is Holyfield, because Holyfield wasn't a big heavyweight either. But yeah, that probably was pushing it a little bit. That was probably pushing it just a little bit. So, but yeah, you know what? It brought up another very interesting component to me, because, and this is a theory that I've always had about Roy. is Roy did so many things unconventionally, right? What it just that you would say are technically wrong. But he was able to do those things because of how gifted he was, because of how physically gifted he was. But I also think that that's the reason maybe that he wasn't able to be as great as long as, say, a Bernard Hopkins, who didn't necessarily depend on the sheer athleticism to remain in that elite status like Roy. So for Roy, I'm barely slipping this punch. I'm barely slipping this punch, but me barely making you miss keeps me in a position to counter back and to have an impact with a counter punch or with just that barely slipping somebody keeps you in a position to counter better. And as those instincts start to leave and the reflexes start to leave, then those punches that you used to barely slip or barely make miss and you're able to put to counter, he's not making those guys miss anymore. Is that kind of what you think happens with a fighter? I mean, obviously it's not a lot of guys like Roy, but do you kind of see that with him?
I mean, it's really simple. I was at Jones Tarver 1, which people felt was a questionable decision. And in the rematch, Tarver stopped Roy Jones Jr. With a punch that Roy Jones might have been able to slip a year or two earlier. Maybe the hands would have. There just becomes a point where physically the body just diminishes, and that just, it happens to everyone. Look, come on. What's the other expression we like to use in boxing? There's only one person in boxing that's truly undefeated, and that's Father Time.
Father Time. Yeah.
And I just think that was you got to look at people in their primes, and you got to look at people as to who they fought and who they beat, and at the rate that they fought, and put all of those things and take that into consideration. I mean, Terry Norris lost to Keith Mullings, and we were set up for bigger things back then after that fight, and he got stopped. I mean, Keith Mullings is not going to be on someone's, top 100 list of best junior middleweights in the history of boxing. Yeah,
but he's the answer to a trivia question if you're talking about Terry Norris.
I mean, and there's a lot of cases like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of cases like that. Like I remember Mark Breland not being able to get past Marlon Starling. Just couldn't. And I mean, even the late Vernon Forrest just having Shane's number, having his number. It's a lot of fights like that. No, and obviously Vernon Forrest and Marlon Starling are better fighters than Keith Mullings, but just an example.
Look, and even more so, Brian, that and I mentioned this, early on in talking about Roy, even more so with a fighter that relied on his physical attributes.
Yes.
A fighter that kept his hands down at his waist, that put his chin up in front of you, that goaded you in to missing, to get counterpunched by 3 left hooks before you set your feet. And had power.
I loved it.
The triple left hook. I mean, so when that style doesn't change.
Yeah.
But yet the physical attributes diminish. Hands down, chin out, just not being able to slip a punch at the rate that you're able to slip it a year or two earlier. Those things catch up to guys like that, versus a guy like Floyd, who has great defense, which will help you have longevity.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Being able to just be a master at the defensive art, not relying so much on the physicality as much as, skill, ring IQ, etc. I'm not saying Roy didn't have a high boxing IQ, but he just was physically more gifted than anybody that he fought.
Everybody. Yeah. He was like a superhero. He was really like a superhero. And it was great to watch. And it was one of those things that if you were privileged enough to be experiencing it while it was happening, whether even in person or even at home watching it live, you knew you were watching something that you wasn't just going to be able to see again next year or the year after that.
You know, and I make this other point to people, which I worked with Derek Gainer in the early 2000s. In fact, his last world title shot against Chris John, we were working together. And at the time, you know, Roy had one trainer up until the end of his career when he brought his dad back into the picture. But he had Alton Murkison, who was trainer of the year. Who else has Alton Murkison trained besides Roy Jones Jr. that had success? Derek Gainer. Okay. And then the heavyweight, I forget his name, Gabe. He never really turned. Remember Roy was Roy's friend?
Yeah. Like I can't remember. I can't recall his name, but I see his face.
Right. The point I'm making is that I think a lot of guys could have been in Roy's corner. Nothing against Alton Murkison. I mean, he obviously did a great job with Roy. But the point I'm making is that when it's like, I'd say the same thing right now. You could take Freddie Roach. You could take 10 other guys. You put them in Manny's corner. I don't think much would have changed.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it was Roy's just ability that really made the difference.
Yeah. It's actually almost a lot. It's a lot like what we were talking to Buddy about. The fighters make trainers make fighters. And so clearly, if you got Roy Jones Jr., I don't know how much I don't know how much he actually needs, you know, especially before 2003. So, but it's interesting. It's a very interesting conversation. It's time for us to go into the championship rounds.
Yes.
So I want to know, what did you have to say about what I had to say about Canelo and Triple G prediction from Eddie Reynoso?
So, well, I disagree with the both of you. So I first of all, I don't think, well, first of all, the first fight was a draw. And I don't even think it should have been a draw. I think that Triple G won that fight. The second fight was a very close fight. What we did see was we saw a Canelo that employed a different strategy, came forward. He confused Triple G, took the fight to him. He made the fight. He made the action. But it was still a very close fight. Could have been a draw. I even scored it for Triple G. I have no argument with Canelo having won that fight. I wrote a story in Forbes that I remember, that was boxing needs to revisit the way it judges fights. Because I felt like that fight, too, was, maybe not scored the best. And if you remember, it was the first fight that we had the really outlandish scorecard by Adelaide Bird, right? Was it the first? Was it the first one or was it the second one?
It was the second one, I believe.
Okay. There was one. So to my point, and if you go back and Google that and Peter Kahn, Forbes, Canelo, Triple G, whatever. I think it was boxing needs to revisit I think it was Canelo versus Triple G 2, aftermath. Boxing needs to revisit the way it's, scores fights, whatever. Anyway, the point I'm making is this. I think that, Brian, what's the last thing to go for a fighter?
The power. Right.
And who has power out of the two of those guys? I know they both do, but who's the real, who's made his name?
Golovkin's got that sledgehammer.
Got that power. And by the way, my rebuttal here, I might just kind of ask the witness some questions. I hope you don't mind.
No.
Okay.
The witness is free to speak.
Okay. Thank you. So the power is still going to be there. Yes, Triple G had a tough time with Derevyanchenko. I think Derevyanchenko had the fight of his life. And a very good fighter who people might underestimate. So with that being said, what I'm really thinking here is, like I said with Danny Jacobs, who kind of ran out of time, but started to realize. Now, Canelo has a granite chin, as we saw in that Jacobs fight. I mean, we all know that punch that I'm talking about, where he basically took like one of those Rocky style, the head swivels around, comes right back, nothing happens. I'm not saying that I think Triple G is going to stop Canelo, but I don't see Canelo stopping Triple G. And I do think that he has to be mindful of Triple G's power. He can't just take it for granted that he's going to walk through that. Remember, Canelo's also getting older. Although he hasn't been through too many tough fights recently, Kovalev gave him a heck of a fight. Danny Jacobs was a little too cautious. I know Jacobs had trouble making weight. I know there are a lot of issues there. I just think that, you know, for a comment to be made, I think maybe they're trying to sell it a little bit. I honestly think that Canelo thinks that that fight's just not really a sellable fight. I also feel that that's not a fight that he necessarily wants. From what I heard, DAZN basically wouldn't sign off on the Billy Joe Saunders fight until Canelo agreed that the Triple G fight would be the next fight. Then, of course, we have Saunders getting in trouble, getting suspended in boxing by, you know, the British Board Boxing Control, and then the WBO chimed in. Then the coronavirus hit us. So at that point, you know, everything was shut down and they were going to go straight to the Triple G fight anyway. So, you know, whether they're trying to play some mind games, listen, Canelo's going to have had a heck of a time off as well of inactivity. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't see him coming in. It's just not Canelo's style either. He's not going to be reckless and very aggressive. He's going to be methodical. He's going to be strategic. He's either going to be the counterpuncher like he was in the first fight, or he's going to try to bring the fight forward. And I really do believe that if anyone's going to be prepared for the adjustment this time, it's going to be Triple G, because Triple G fights one way. Okay, so Canelo was able to prepare for that one way. And in the second fight, Triple G, I believe, was not prepared for a forward-coming aggressive Canelo.
Yeah, he wasn't. First 5 rounds.
But don't underestimate that power, because it only takes one nice shot to get hurt. And the other thing is, you know, I think Kovalev was in the fight, even though it was at a bigger weight. And the other question I have is, what weight are they going to fight at? Is it going to be middleweight? Is it going to be a catch weight? Is Canelo going to struggle getting back down to 60? Where's that fight going to be?
I believe that. I really do believe that. And I honestly believe that might have something to do with why Canelo doesn't really want to fight Triple G again, because getting back down to that weight. I think that might have something to do with it. Not that Triple G can't make a bigger weight, because I'm sure he can too, because I'm quite sure it's not, you know, peaches and roses for a 38-year-old his size to make 160 either. But, you know, and he did just turn 38 less than a week ago. Okay,
so, but Canelo's also been fighting since he's 15 years old.
Right. So he's an old 29.
He's got a lot of wear and tear on him too.
Yeah, he's an old 29 for sure. He is. Because when you say Canelo's 29, you're like, really? He's only 29? Because it feels like he's 34.
Right.
You know, so yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do believe Canelo wins. I do believe that he wins more convincingly than any of them have performed in either the first 2 fights. But I agree, he will not knock him out. But I do believe he'll win a little bit more convincingly than maybe it seems like you do. But we'll see. The next next championship rounds, I'm sorry, you were talking about Dominic Brazil and Andy Ruiz, and it was very entertaining to me. So I understand what you're saying. I get it, right? And I almost feel like I want to start talking like Roy right now, because see, I understand what you're saying.
See, better you do it than me, because if I did it, people would be like hating on me for, you know,
I love
why are you talking like that? Why you sound like that? I'll let you do it.
Because you got to understand, you know. But I understand what Dominic Brazil is doing. We are human beings, and we are made to try to survive. It's self-preservation. He's not ready to stop fighting,
right? And
I can't sensibly call out somebody who just knocked me out. I've been knocked out by both Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. So if I'm not done fighting yet, I got to call out somebody. And I got to call out the biggest name that I can have a prayer to get into, to get a fight with.
Right.
And also, I'm calling out the person who I might be able to actually beat, depending on where they are mentally. Now, is Andy Ruiz a better fighter than Dominic Brazil? I believe so. I believe he's more talented. He's just a better fighter. But he does struggle with the weight. He is smaller. Dominic Brazil is a huge guy, so obviously he does have the ability to knock a guy out. You know, Muhammad Ali used to always say, any man that's 200 pounds more can knock you out. So we're talking about somebody way over that with Dominic Brazil, huge guy. So he sees this as potentially his only or next biggest opportunity as a payday. And so I understand what he's doing. Does it make me super interested in seeing it? No, it doesn't. I would watch it out of pure obligation to cover the sport that I cover.
Right.
But if you removed that obligation and responsibility from me and you asked me, am I going to sit down on a Saturday night and watch Dominic Brazil and Andy Ruiz fight on a nondescript Showtime card? I'm probably not going to be super excited about that. Now, I might watch the replay of the knockout because it might be entertaining just to see whoever it is that got dropped.
Right.
But yeah, it's a tough sale. It's a tough sale.
I mean, my whole point was who cares? I understand. My whole point was who cares? My point was who cares? I think he might have said that he also beats Dillian White too. So I don't know.
He knows what level to aim at. That's what it is. He knows what level to aim at. You know, and honestly,
I'd sooner ask for the Wilder rematch.
If you were Brazil,
I'm just saying.
But why would he do that? I mean, why that? If he does that, nobody's going to even take it serious, let alone not caring.
What I'm saying is, if I'm him, I would want to avenge that loss and prove that it was just one big shot. I'm just. Listen,
the funny thing is, he actually buzzed.
I know, right before. I know we talked about this.
Yeah, so that's interesting, but
you know, this is also a function of PBC continuing to recycle the guys. I mean, why doesn't he fight Kaunaki? I mean, it's just that they recycle these guys, which I understand. They're not the only ones that do it, but because they have so many heavyweights, right? In that scenario, you know, it's a great way to keep these guys. I guess the winner gets another shot at you know, moving forward. The loser has to kind of assess where they are in the ecosystem.
Yeah, because they do have something that most of the promoter and most of the stables don't have. They have a good amount of heavyweights.
Yeah, they do.
Kaunaki,
absolutely.
Jermaine Franklin,
right.
You know, Andy Ruiz.
Oh, Franklin's up and coming. I mean,
he's up and coming, but he's still, you know, somewhat.
Did you say Jermaine Franklin?
Is that what I said? Yeah.
Isn't he with Salida, or I thought he was with Dimitri Salida?
He fights on Showtime though, because he fights on Clarissa's cards.
Right,
so
but I think he's with Salida. I don't think he's with PBC. But
I'm talking about Showtime more so.
Gotcha.
The network. Okay. Yeah. So you know, there's a lot of heavyweights within reach for Showtime guys.
Right.
So, and that's not the case. I mean, because you see, you know, ESPN and Top Rank and that whole, you know, thing.
I mean, listen, I mean, yeah,
they're for straws finding opponents for Tyson Fury.
It's been tough, and Top Rank's only other heavyweight that you hear about is Pulev, who, you know, not impressed with Pulev either. I've been to his last two fights, and
gonna fight Joshua and whenever possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is what it is. It's an interesting thing though, but I don't blame Dominic Brazil for trying to make something out of nothing, which is what he's doing. So that's all we got for you today. I appreciate everybody who came in and joined us, whether you're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, or Fight TV. As I said, make sure that you go to YouTube and subscribe to the Fight Guys YouTube channel. Go to Fight TV and subscribe to the application there. And also you can catch us on Facebook as I mentioned. For my man, Peter Kahn, my fellow Fight Guy and fellow Forbes contributor, we appreciate you watching. God bless.